Well, Justin, welcome to the podcast. I know when we did a discovery call, I swear we were on the phone for close to an hour. I swear. And I was so ingrained into the call that I didn't even realize how long the call was going. And here we're doing it again. We're 20 minutes into talking and we still haven't pressed record. Now we
have. We should have started recording from the get-go.
I know.
Last time.
I know. I should just edit them all together.
It's good. Justin, I have so much information, you don't have to worry.
Justin, I'm so excited to have you here to give our listeners a bit of insight into what we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes. Quite honestly, we've been talking about reality TV, the entertainment industry. Justin comes to us from LA, and we've been talking about real estate, obviously selling Sunset, and all of the joys of reality TV and that it's not really realistic. But what I loved talking to Justin about that is Justin also comes to us from the entertainment industry within his career. He is a director, has produced movies and documentaries. Correct, Justin?
That's correct.
Yeah, so director, he's a writer, he's a speaker, he's a drummer. I see in the background right now, there's drums, there's guitar, there's a piano, there's everything. And he's also a writer. So Justin, without further ado, how about we jump into everything you do within the entertainment and creative industry, first of all?
Would love to. I think you said writer twice, so I guess I'll take that.
Hey, I mean, it's worth it.
The other thing you didn't mention was actor, which
actor, yes.
I sometimes don't want to admit myself because everyone here is an actor. And it's sort of one of those things, but when you live in Los Angeles, every third person is an actor, if not less than that. And so
well, that's why everyone goes to LA, right?
Yeah. And it's also why most people leave LA too, I think. It's pretty crazy industry. And what I've learned when I first came out here, most pursuing acting is I learned that I had to start bringing all my hats into the entertainment fold because just being an actor, well, that's a weird way to say it, but relying solely on an acting career is not necessarily the recipe for success. And most big actors, A-list actors even, will tell you the same because you never know. Projects come, projects go, they get pushed. A lot of times when you think you're up against a lot of competition when you're starting out, but even when you're an A-lister, you'll be up against 4 or 5 other A-listers sometimes for a role. And it's like, they make certain choices for the reason they do. And that person who you'd be like, oh my God, that person actually had to audition. They actually got turned down. Like, yeah, it's at all levels. And that's why the really smart actors are really business people. And that means they have other things going on in their lives and they balance it all. They all understand that they need to have, whether it's product lines, whether it's restaurants, even though that's not necessarily the best business model out here, but you find other ways of diversifying, your income so that you have things going. I like to bring up 50 Cent, the rapper who sure made a lot of money as a rapper, but he made so much more when he hooked up and made vitamin water with, I think, Coca-Cola. And so that became like the big money thing. Or you have other people who started clothing lines and have deals with like Macy's and things like that. So I think it's really smart to diversify, but without watering things down. I started in the TV business for starters as a director, producer of studio television back in Chicago. I got my degree at Indiana University and my degree was in TV and theater. And so I was working solely producing local TV in Chicago before I got hired to come out to Palm Springs, California. And the ABC and Fox affiliates hired me to write, direct, and produce commercials for the local market. It wasn't until I just got kind of burned out with all of that I came to LA and started just going into the acting and entertainment business because I've always loved to be a performer. And I realized that where I wasn't necessarily being fed and I wasn't living up to my greatest potential. And I knew at the age I was, it was like, now's the time to take the chance because I don't want to years down the road have regrets for not doing it. So I made the move to LA. I jumped into acting right away and studied and classes and improv and stage combat and started doing some indie films. And what I found out really fast is that it's really hard and there's no overnight success. And I started finding a lot of musicians and I'm a drummer my entire life. Next thing you know, I'm playing with different players, different groups, and I'm playing gigs and music sort of took a faster leap than acting did in the early going. And I started playing with a lot of bands in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, recording records, multiple tours, toured Europe twice, toured all over America, North America. Just had a lot of fun doing that. And it wasn't until 2007 when I got my first real acting break. And I was cast in a film called Surfer Dude. I auditioned with Matthew McConaughey, who was the lead actor and the producer, and he personally auditioned me for the callback as well and hired me. And that was really special. That my first real film role, real film meaning, I guess, real feature budget film, was a film with was now a Oscar winning actor. And what was cool is
And
like
he
many
wasn't
years,
at the time?
not yet, it was
Oh.
2007. Several years later, I was at a special screening of the film Gold that he did. And it was followed by Q&A with him and some of the other cast members. And I got to stand up in front of the entire audience and actually inform him that he had given me my first acting role. And he was very touched by it. I thanked him publicly, and it was a really cool moment. We met up afterwards, took a couple photos and had a little chat. And so, it's cool. You never know where stuff's going to come from. But I had no idea what I was doing. And I had a tour of the whole US, both 3 weeks after I shot my film, and off I was on tour and trying to still make it with a band, which, is also an insanely difficult world and a lot of moving parts when it comes to playing with bands, which are very unpredictable at times. And, but I had fun. I had crazy, great experiences. And, by the time I sort of circled back and started doing a little more acting, I did finally get my foot in the door in the commercial acting world, not till 2012. And, people say like, oh, I'm gonna go to Hollywood, be an actor. And then a year later, they're like, oh, I'm moving back to Kansas because like they didn't get a break. And it's like, well, it took me 6.5 years to book a real role. And it took me 11 years to book my first national commercial. But once I booked my first national, I booked 6 more since, including a Super Bowl commercial and a couple spots that had a really good run. And so I've gotten the opportunity to work on the bigger projects and had a lot of fun, whether it was music, whether it was acting. But, you mentioned writing, directing in the movie world. And, it wasn't to a point where I wasn't getting enough opportunities. And I had written a script for fun and I kind of put it away. And my wife reminded me one day when I believe I was just bitching about not getting enough calls from my agent or whatever. And she's like,
Wives are
you
good
read a
at
movie.
that, aren't
Yeah,
they?
she's very
Like,
good at
remember that
reminding
thing
me.
that you wrote?
She's like, I read it and it made me cry. We have a movie script. We own a film production studio together and we work for other clients and we make other people stuff. Why don't we just make your movie? I'm like, oh, yeah. Why don't we just do that? And we did. And we put it all together and we raised money and we got a crew and hired other actors. And, we made a great 15.5 minute short film that went on to tour 21 festivals internationally and even played in India and Sweden. And we didn't get to go to all the performances, but we went to several. It won 5 awards total, including a best short in one festival. And I actually won best actor in a leading role in another festival. So it was really sort of exciting to get the film out there and tour with it for a year. And now it's available on a cable network called Shorts TV, as well as on Amazon Prime. It's called Welcome to Where You've Always Been. And if you just go to that website, welcome to where you've always been.com, it will take you directly to the Amazon Prime page, or you can look it up. But, if you
That's
are
what I'm doing
interested, it's,
tonight after this.
I hope so. It's, it's in line with everything that I've always done as an artist. And that is when I create, whether it's writing lyrics, poetry, or film, or the stuff I'm working on now, which is a whole other story we'll get to in a little bit. It's been art with a message. It's art to entertain and to inspire. And my wife and I both really subscribe to that. And we've always done art that helps uplift humanity while entertaining and sharing something, profound. And this film I wrote is about a poet who is brilliant and talented, yet highly depressed and suicidal. And, can't see the blessings around him in the world. I mean, a lot of this character was drawn for me, but not 100% of it. But it definitely gave people some inspiration and insight into what depression looks like and, what happens when you're faced with something huge and have to make a big decision in life or death. And, that's kind of the direction you're going. And that was the next projects we started working on after that. But something happened and put us on hold for a few years.
So, Justin, you speak about how long it took you to get that first acting role. You said 6.5 years. How do you know when to not give up and you just keep grinding? The hearing you say that, I'm like, oh wow, that's a lot of persistence. Nowadays, people don't stick to things for 6 months. So, what made you want to just keep going?
nowadays people don't stick to things for 6 minutes. I mean, 6 seconds was the limit on video when Vine launched, so attention spans are really low.
Yeah, didn't Quibi like, they're not a thing right now? Is 10 minutes too long of a
That
film
was too
these
long.
days?
Yeah. It's gotta be 10 seconds. It's like, you got to get in and get it out. The thing is, even though our attention spans and our sort of current generation and what we're up against is a lot shorter as far as what we're willing to stick it out with, this has been a theme for a long time. I lived in Hollywood for my first 6.5 years here, and my building was full of all kinds of artists, actors, musicians, dancers, promoters, DJs, and it was just a really Hollywood type of building. And I saw people come, people go, people come, people go. I remember a couple of the guitar players moved into a unit underneath me, and they were trying to break it in the biz, and they started a band. They were here for a year, and then they told me, "Oh, we're moving out." And I said, "Oh, what happened?" They're like, "We gave it a year and we couldn't really make it. So we're going back to the Midwest where, where it's cheaper to live." And so the thing is, it's always going to be cheaper and easier somewhere else. The grass is always greener somewhere else. You either are a performer and an artist and a creator, or you're not. You can dibble and dabble. Now, not to discredit those hobbyists and those who aspire to do the work, but as a profession, and that's a big word right there, as a professional musician, a professional actor, it's a very different mindset than I'm trying to make it big to get famous, to get money. You have to realize why you're doing it. Otherwise, you're not going to stick it out and you're never going to get there, because the hard days are going to come. And even if you think you've started to make it, you will have disappointments that rival, bigger disappointments. You have to be a professional creator and performer with the mindset that you are going into something and there is no quit. There is no end date. There is no expiration. And I knew going in that no matter what happened, and a lot of stuff happened, I lost everything at one point. I had no home. I was living out of a car. I didn't know what else to do, but I knew that I still was keeping my eye on the prize, and that my life had more purpose and more meaning. I was a professional. I still am a professional, and that it doesn't matter how long it takes to do anything. You find ways to keep sticking it out until you get where you need to get. There are people out who have been at it for a lot longer than me who haven't broken in yet, who keep going because they understand it's just a matter of time. There are actors, Morgan Freeman comes to mind. I think he was 50 something.
Yeah,
John
50s or 60s for
Malkovich
sure.
was 50 when
Yeah.
he booked his first real film. So these guys at 50 and then have gone on to
They
win
have full
Oscars,
careers before that,
and
full lives before they finally
they
make it
kept
big.
going, doing local theater, doing sketch comedy, doing whatever they're doing. But ultimately, something finally clicked. Something lined up the right way. They paid their dues. They learned the game. They figured out where they belong. Sometimes, we're sort of climbing the wrong tree for a long time. We have to realize that, wait, let me scale back and really realize what I'm going after. And then the biggest thing, like my wife reminded me when I talked about the film, especially in this day and age, is that if you sit around and wait for the phone to ring, like so many of us do, most of the time it's not going to ring. You need to be busy. You need to be creating. You need to be putting yourself out there, making content, working on what can you do to contribute to the world and contribute to your art, and contribute to your future and your career. And when you're busy and when you don't have time for anything else, the phone rings. It happened to me this week. I'm in the middle of
Justin, it's been
working
happening to me all week as well, but
See,
I
you
want to
get
hear
it.
about you more.
Well, I'm in the middle of right now, and I took this time out here to chat with you today, which I'm honored to be part of.
Yes, I
Because I
appreciate it. This is
just,
our Friday
of
nights,
course,
Justin.
I'm going to be working tonight, so that's all good. I'll be working right after this. But I completed a documentary edit for one of my corporate clients and sent it off an hour before we got on this call today, because the deadline was today to get this one in. And I have another video for them due by Monday that I'm going to start on after this. I'm also working on another big project for another corporate client, and then for a theater organization, a lot of video edits. And this is what my studio does and where we make money. And I got a call during the middle of the week to play a drummer on a new TV show, shooting on one of the sound stages on a lot out here. And, it was going to be yesterday. And I looked at the kind of commitment that would have been versus the money that they would have paid, because it wasn't a full featured principal acting role. It was more of a special ability musician thing, which was way lower without any residual pay. And so I really had to be like, okay, well, I'm in the position now of power where I get to choose. Do I take the gig on set, or do I finish this massive short documentary film that I believe had more precedence and more financial benefit to it? So, that's what I chose. So those are the beautiful moments where you're so busy that you get to turn things down. And, it's sort of law of attraction, like begets life. Keep putting things out there. That's when things start to happen. When you're sitting back and waiting and sort of like, help me, instead of going out there and doing, then most of the time nothing comes your way. And then you get frustrated and you give up.
Justin, you are echoing everything I've been thinking and saying lately. I find it goes without saying, it's business, it's relationships. The moment that you have your plate full, it's almost like the world and everyone else around feels like, oh, she doesn't need us or he doesn't need us. It's like, okay, let's offer her these opportunities. And I love what you said where you almost have a little bit more power in terms of your time. It's because then you don't look when you have your plate full and something else
Mhm.
is coming, you look at the opportunity cost where it's like, if I pick that over what I'm currently doing, you know? So it is a position of power.
Yes.
You really look at your hourly rate now because time is money. And it's not until you have so much on the go that you realize that phrase, time is money, is so, so true. So powerful.
So, and this
Go
also
ahead.
plays out in whether an actor going into an audition or a business person going into a job interview. Desperation reeks. And that's like this old cliche saying that is really very true. When you walk in and you just don't give a shit. Like when I auditioned for McConaughey back in the day, I quite frankly, I didn't give a shit. I didn't submit to be an actor in the film. I submitted to be an extra to make a few bucks before our tour. I was all about music then. And when I rolled into the audition, I had like chipped black nail polish on my fingers. I had a little leftover eyeliner from like the night
So
before
you
we
are
were
on
out doing
brand, is
stuff.
what you're telling me.
Basically, yeah, I rolled in like I was a mess. I didn't even like at that time. I didn't even have a car. My car was totaled, but while parked on a street, and I had to get a ride from some friends from England who were in town up to Malibu just so I can go on audition. I didn't have the size until I got there.
Justin, how old are you when this is happening? Just to put things in perspective for people.
30s, I guess. I don't
I'm
remember
asking
what
that
year.
because I want to prove to the audience, you do not need to have your life figured out before 30.
No. Oh
I
my
hate
gosh.
that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't ever have to have your life really figured out. You just have to wake up every day and do your best. Really. Your life can't be figured out because every time you think you got it figured out, like in
Shit's
2017,
gonna shake up.
dude, and I mean, this is maybe a good segue because in 2017, my film that I talked about was just wrapping its year-long festival tour and just got a distribution offer. My wife and I started writing notes for a future film we were about to write together. We had corporate clients and individual clients. I had a national commercial that was running on constant on the air. I was auditioning for a lot of projects. I was playing in two bands. I was playing in the weekly flag football league. I was competing in the Gold's Gym Fitness Challenge because why not? Just trying to get in even better shape. And I mean, I'm like maybe in my early 40s now. And so doing all these things and feeling healthy and feeling great and feeling alive. And what happens that spring of 2017? I get diagnosed with cancer. Guess what? I had it all figured out and I was ready for the next level. And then out of nowhere, completely unexpected, I got a diagnosis. I had a germ cell tumor inside of my chest, almost 14 centimeters long. And it was jamming my lung in one direction and my heart in the other direction. And there was no time to play. Once we figured out what I had, it was go time. And my entire life came to a screeching halt. So proof in the pudding, I thought I had things figured out and I was ready to go on to the next level of my life. And really what I was ready for was the greatest challenge of my life, which has changed my life in so many ways. And I think that's a big reason why we're on this call today and what we can talk about next.
And you mentioned that was in 2017. So we're still early on in that journey of yours, Justin. 3 years later, like this is truly still only the beginning. Obviously, and let our audience know, you are cancer free today, correct?
Yeah, I am a cancer survivor,
Mm-hmm.
cancer free, if you will. I still have, you know, stuff that I deal with. Some things will never go away from the journey. The cancer is most likely not going to come back in the kind of that I had, but I had complications that did create some other scenarios that always kind of ring in the back of my mind of what if that happens again. But as of right now, I do stand before you healthy with a clean bill of health, feeling good, feeling strong, and rebuilding my life. So we are living in the sort of happy ending, new beginning moment at the time.
Absolutely. And If you want to bring us back right to the beginning of, talk to us about the type of cancer you had, perhaps, and talk to us about how you found out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was, like I said, in the middle of all this physical activity and busy and excited and happy and feeling really good. I've been plant-based 100% since 2011 and into physical fitness and health and well-being since the 90s, early 90s even. So I've ran my entire life. I've really been taking care of myself. I did a lot of emotional healing work. I got into a lot of personal development, in like between 2010, 2012. And in those years, started practicing Buddhism amongst other spiritualities. And I was really, really tuned up. And we're going to come back to why I'm telling you all this in a little bit. But I was really tuned up in a lot of ways and my body was really healthy. So in that state that I was in, my body was able to speak to me very loudly when something was wrong. And we were able to sort of react pretty quickly when we realized that. So it was April. I woke up one morning feeling like just awful. I guess the closest I would describe it to is like a flu. I have not had the flu in so long that I didn't really know what I was experiencing, but it was shakes and aches and chills and a headache. And then I ended up having fever and I couldn't get out of bed. And the fever was like 102.3, I believe, something pretty high. And by the next day, I started feeling like a pain pressure in my chest that I had felt something in my chest a few months earlier that sort of came like a pressure feeling, went away after a couple of days. I didn't really, think much of it because I felt better. But obviously this was already kind of making its way. And by the time that day rolled along, I was in pain and pressure and it was hard to breathe. And after 3 days, it was time to call back the doctor. And she had ordered me up a CT scan. And then after like the fourth day, my fever broke and I felt better. And I'm like, oh, maybe I don't need to go and get the CT scan. I think I feel okay. And my wife and my mother double teamed. And basically the message was, Justin, get the fucking CT scan. So I was like, okay, I'll just get the CT. And that Wednesday, I went and got the CT. I think it's like April 18th now, I'm getting my dates right. And the next day, I was back to business. We had a big event shoot that night that we've been doing every year for many years. And as we were basically pulling up to the event, my phone rang from the doctor's office and they said that I needed to come in the next day to meet with the doctor. And they couldn't tell me why, but they gave me a couple of hints about a few things that they probably shouldn't have. And I just started to spin out of control because I didn't know what was wrong. I just knew that something was wrong and that they needed me to come in. So I was like, oh my God, I don't have time for this. I'm busy. I don't want to think about this. I had to wait 24 full hours until I could see the doctor the next day at like 5:30 in the afternoon. And so I went in the next day and she then informed me that there was a mass inside of my chest. It had grown already to about 13 centimeters at that time. They could tell that it was pushing into my heart. They didn't really know much else, but they didn't know what it was. And they said that they had already referred me to this top cardiothoracic surgeon at UCLA that I had already an appointment with 8 a.m. that Monday morning. So I waited the weekend and stressed out all weekend long, knowing that there was a mass inside of my chest. I met the doctor. The first thing he said was he suspected cancer. So it was like, okay, this is insane. I was sent on a 2-week fact finding mission of tests that were absolutely bonkers. Now, skipping ahead here, but I do have a one-man show that I'll talk about later on, which is available online right now. And I do play out this whole scenario of me doing the testing in the one-man show, and it's quite hysterical. So I would love for you guys to get it that way as well. Let's give
I'll link
you
that in
sort
the
of
show notes for sure.
the bullet points that I went through 2 weeks of insane testing of scans and x-rays and ultrasounds and MRIs, blood tests, and even a surgical procedure to take a biopsy. And, every day we were running to another facility and it was crazy. By the time I rolled around to my next doctor's appointment, which was on May 4th, I did choose that day, by the way, because May the 4th be with you. And I went to see my doctor and he then informed me that I had a germ cell cancer tumor in my chest. It was now almost 14 centimeters. It was going really, really aggressively fast. They had already found me the oncologist that they were referring me to. And they sent me literally from one building down to Santa Monica where the oncologist was already waiting for me to get there. And she gave me the whole kind of treatment layout. And some other pretty crazy information. I mean, even like the next day, they sent me to a sperm bank and said, listen, we needed to go make a deposit because this chemo is gonna pretty much wreck you. And some other pretty uncomfortable conversations that we had that day.
So basically, like, if you ever wanna have kids, because you don't have kids right now, right?
I do not have kids, no.
So basically what they're saying, if you ever wanna have kids, like, we need to have a sperm sample now. Is that where you're going with that? Is that what that means or no?
Exactly. Yeah. They
Oh,
said
okay.
the chemo would basically kill my ability. They said it may not be permanent, but that they don't want to take chances. But meanwhile, I'm like, my wife and I are in a place where we're not really gonna have kids, it looks like anyway.
I
And
know,
so
but even for them to have that conversation, I'm sure you're sitting there, standing there and being like, "Oh, fuck, this is
yeah,
serious."
it was really, yeah, it was really, I mean, I had this dialogue the other day with somebody too. I mean, I had just received a cancer diagnosis and a treatment plan that was absolutely crazy. The very next day, I was dealing with the insurance companies and trying to get everything approved, which for some reason they didn't want to approve right away. Welcome to our awesome medical system. And then I had to go have a brain MRI that day, which was the most horrible claustrophobic experience. And then I had to go to a sperm bank and go into a little room, my wife, and produce. And it was like, what? Like, it was like, really, I'm really just not in the mood.
This this almost, and I don't mean to diminish this at all, but when you get into that little room with your wife, you're like, "This is almost comical now." Like, "This is so
Oh, it was
weird," you
hysterical.
know?
We laughed. Yeah, we laughed. That's all you can do is really laugh. We're looking at the magazines and the videos that were in the room and
Wait,
like,
what?
no, this is what they
No,
do.
I've
It's
never
like,
been to a sperm bank, just
so like they
so they
have a
put
row of little rooms and like there's a little TV there and a
it's a
little
Playboy
corporate suite.
mansion.
Well, it's
Mini
yeah,
mini version.
downscale,
Yeah.
a couple of old like and they always seem to have like these really old like Playboys and things. Like it's like, what am I, 14? Like this is like these old magazines and
But
like
now
the
you're doing it with
collection
your
of
wife?
video. Yeah, the videos. I'm like, like and then like, there's a chair where you're like, I don't know how many guys have been in this room before me. And then they have like, in the bathroom, like those toilet paper covers. They got like those little waxy seat covers so that you can sit down and get comfortable.
They
Oh
really
no,
know how to put people in the mood.
yeah, it was really non-romantic. But the good news is that we produced and I created 12 perfect vials from that, which is now sitting in an ice box in Santa Monica, and I pay rent every month.
You're paying the
Still,
storage fee, Justin.
I pay rent every month for 12, like an ice cube tray, basically. Expensive. And the thing is, I don't know if I'll ever use it. So I've kept paying it because I was told that my type of cancer is not hereditary or something in my blood, like certain other types of cancer. It was just a misplaced cell as an embryo. So the fact is that there's no more or less chance of cancer occurring based on what I have in my DNA versus anybody else with the kind of thing that I had. So it's viable. And so I always thought, well, if there's anybody out there that is having trouble, maybe the man doesn't have the ability, or maybe it's an all women couple that are looking for a donor and they want to use someone that they know. I've basically thought, well, I'll keep it and I'll gift it to somebody who needs it. I have 12 possible kids in there that I'm happy to gift to anybody who needs it. So I put it out there publicly just in case anybody wants to
You
reach out to
never
me.
know who could be listening to this.
You know what? I mean, it would be the greatest gift and honor if I could help somebody else when I know that we didn't, have it ourselves. But that was that experience. And then to, I guess, segue to the type of cancer that it was, a germ cell tumor is a lost cell that happens when you're just a little embryo. Germ cells are in every human. Germ cells are what create eggs or sperm. And they travel down your little embryo and land in what's called the gonad primordia. I'm being scientific here. And they to figure out what you are, male, female. Then they go ahead and they actually go undergo meiotic cell division. The only cell in the body to do that based on what your sex gender is. And then they create your sort of future creations. My cell got stuck along the way. Everyone who has a germ cell tumor, typically it's a cell that gets stuck, doesn't make it down, and it parks itself outside. And what happens is it just lays there dormant because it never landed where it was supposed to go. And it lays there dormant for many, many years. A lot of times people will, have theirs will turn on and start doing something when they're in their teens. A lot of people I've talked to are boys that are 14, another boy that was 18, a girl that was 17, another girl that was 21. So I was clearly a late bloomer as per my usual MO. But, it's one of those things where I laid dormant my whole life and something woke it up. And then it just started trying to create what it was supposed to do, but it was in the wrong place in the wrong time. And therefore it just created mass. And since it was one of the very first cells, the kind of growth that it was doing was very rapid, very, very fast growing because it has to move fast when you're that little. So it is tied to testicular cancer, although it is not a cancer of the testes. Nevertheless, I was still convinced I had a testicle growing inside of my chest.
Is that how it felt? Or
Just
that's
like
just like what you
in
knew
my
about?
chest.
You're like, is this
Well,
kind of what's happening?
I called it my chesticle just for fun. And, it didn't feel like anything. I didn't really know what it felt like. All I felt was pressure and some difficulty breathing. And then, when I would bend forward, I could feel it. It was pushing against everything inside. We found out after I had the x-rays that I had a broken rib as well. So I don't know where that came from, whether the tumor caused that or, I just hurt myself with the tumor and the long haul. Everything was so you're very tight inside here, inside your chest. Everything is in its compartment. And it's where it's supposed to be. And so you now have something that's 14 centimeters at its longest point, literally going, get out of my way. And it's growing and it's pushing. And so when I was given this insane treatment plan of moving into the hospital to do 3 kinds of chemo, 24 hours a day, 1 week at a time, 2-week break, back into the hospital, rinse and repeat. I was like, this is insane. And I don't want to do chemo. I want to do natural therapies. I'm kind of against chemo. I think it does a lot of harm, sometimes more harm than good. And
most doctors agree that it causes a lot of harm.
Oh, it destroys you. And
basically wipes everything out.
It kills everything. Yeah, it kills everything. I had natural treatments I was already, working with, plus the diet. And I believe that there are several natural treatments that can rectify cancer, but not for everybody. Not for
what
every
ones
type
worked
of
for you?
cancer. Well, I mean, I had to go with the Western medicine route, but I will say that I did other things along with it. One of the biggest proponents, am I saying that right? That I'm a big proponent of, rather, is cannabis. And there's a type of cannabis oil named after Rick Simpson, who sort of developed a blend of THC and CBD that really has this really potent cancer fighting properties, as well as just overall well-being. And it really is something that I continue to do regardless. Even in the hospital, I bring my cannabis to the hospital. And I mean, I figured if I had to be going through cancer, I might as well be stoned most of the time. So it made it pretty fun, but truthfully, it helped my appetite. And I think it really did help and aid along with the chemo that I had to eventually agree to do. And what happened was my heart was in harm's way. And if I didn't start the chemo plan right away, then I would have probably died within a few weeks of my heart essentially collapsing or having a heart attack because of that fact. So I literally couldn't wait to see if other natural treatments that I was looking into as well were going to help or not. I had to basically make peace with chemo right away. And that was a big hurdle that I had to overcome. And then agree to, face this cancer, which I didn't want to at first. I definitely had my trepidations and I wanted to deny that it even existed. And this is where my philosophy starts to come to play. That came to me right around this time. And I chose to go forward and take the recommendation. I had a great medical team, UCLA doctors, some of the best in the world. And I had to go with that option of first killing the tumor. Again, it was 1 week, 3 times of chemo, 24 hours a day. I had to literally move into the hospital. And we did this for 4 full rounds to make sure that, all the cells were dead, but that leaves behind a hardened teratoma, which then needs to be extracted through a full surgery. And that we can get to that in a minute. But that was where I was at. And that's what I was facing that long weekend where I was kind of, recovering from the sperm bank and looking forward to the chemo. So that was in my last weekend.
What a world, hey?
Yeah.
What a life.
I know, right?
Justin, you can correct me, but you seem very lighthearted and open and okay with everything right now. But were you always lighthearted about the whole thing from start to finish, or were there some really low, tough times?
There was definitely a spectrum of highs and lows and everything in between. I think that, and this is something that I teach and I preach, and I will never stop telling people this. And this is, don't wait for something to go wrong before you start working on yourself. And I mean physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I am very, very fortunate that I came into this game already vegan and healthy on plant-based diet, already in top physical shape, which is, I think, one of the reasons I found the tumor as fast as I did. Already having been practicing various spiritualities and like my daily Buddhist chanting and forms of meditation. I had been doing with my wife emotional healing retreats and cracked open a lot of shells on emotion that will come into play even bigger as I'll tell you the rest of my story. But all that stuff set me up to be able to face what I was about to face. And even after the day of my diagnosis, my
You felt
surgeon,
pretty equipped for this, hey?
I mean, no one can feel equipped when faced
No,
with it,
but with
but I felt like I
everything
had a step ahead
yeah.
of most. And I was reassured the day I got my diagnosis by the physician, the secondary physician after my main surgeon, because my surgeon was brilliant, but not the kind of bedside manner you always would hope for, because he's so good. And I play him in my show and it's fun. I'll just let you guys wait to see that. But his second in command essentially walked back into the room after they had left to give me a little reassurance that the other doctor had not. And he said, listen, whatever you're doing, your diet and your exercise program, you are in the best health of anybody we've had come through here. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. If anybody's going to make it through this, you're the guy who's going to do it. And I really I took those words and I really believed that, yeah, you're right. Like what I had been doing really set me up to physically deal with this.
That validation is so powerful coming from a doctor, you know?
Yeah. I mean, because a lot of people say like, oh, your vegan diet's bullshit or whatever. Like, no, like they would have recommended switching to a vegan diet had I not already been on one. So the transition was not there for me. I was just ready to go. I just kept doing what I was doing. But, it was during this last weekend where the spiritual work really kicked in. And this is really where the platform of my philosophy, and I say my philosophy, but really it's just,
No, it is your philosophy and we want to hear a lot about it.
It came to me. It's very Buddhist in principle. It sort of came to me and it's just how I was able to figure it out and how I was able to go through them like steps and how I've been able to share and teach. But when you are in a place of that openness, and I was chanting and the words started to come to me because I was open to receive. And the words were sort of floating around and I saw them sort of floating. Embrace cancer, love cancer, free cancer. Like, the hell? Like, I don't understand, but they were sort of just started rolling around. And I started to just remember all those words. And that was so crucial because as I stepped into the very beginning, embrace became the most powerful first step of not just going through cancer, but what I would learn later is of going through any obstacle you may face in life is embrace. And that means you don't have to like something or want something or choose something, but you have to accept that there is a challenge or an obstacle in front of you. If you are not accepting of your obstacle, you are simply in denial. And that should be left to be the river in Egypt. Like you have to accept, you have to embrace, you have to look at it and say, hey, this is something that I have to face and I have to go through. And if I think anything differently, then I'm not going to be grounded firmly enough to actually face this challenge. And I had to embrace my cancer and accept it, even though I wanted to just forget about it and get back to work and start my next movie. And, I had gigs with bands and I had things to do. And I'm like, no, I want to keep going. I don't have time to stop and go through all this medical shit. I have a whole career I'm working on. I was really, really feeling like I was ready to, burst the bubble and get into the next level. So
in your mind, you're like, this is the absolute worst time. Like come next year, but not today.
But yeah, I mean, I was ready. I would declare it. I was screaming, I'm ready. I'm ready to break in. I'm ready for the next leap, the next plateau. And what's really, in retrospect is that I was ready for the next level. It just, once again, it wasn't what I was expecting. And that's how life is. I was ready and I got what I was ready for. I was ready to face this challenge, which was the next step of my life. So embracing that I had this challenge, and then embracing the fact that I had to go and do the chemo. I was very against the chemo And I was reminded when I started preaching about embracing, I was reminded by two mentors of mine actually that weekend that I need to, because I did live videos on Facebook and YouTube and I shared everything. And I talked about embracing and trying to come from this place of a love embrace. And they said, listen, you're talking about so great about embracing your cancer, but think about embracing your chemo too. Because if you go in with a negative uh, attitude towards it, think about what energetically that's like. You know, you're pushing away something that you need to allow into your body. So I made peace with having to do the chemo, even though I knew it was going to destroy me. And I found myself in the hospital. I had a port installed in here in my chest. Yeah, I have a little scar. I had a port right
Justin is
here.
showing us a scar on his chest for the audio listeners.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's correct. I always think everyone can see me. I do have a nice scar on my chest. There was a port installed and I was hooked up to a rig.
Justin, it matches all your cool tattoos.
Right. You know, it's all part of, you know, the decor. 3 different chemos and liquids and medicine. And I mean, at all times there was between 3 and 6 bags hanging off of me with things coming out. And I would look at, and I would start chanting, and I would chant to my chemo and send gratitude to my chemo. Thank you. Thank you for coming into my body. I accept you. I allow you. I'm open to what you're doing. And I think that acceptance into my body really let it come in with less harm and do more good. And that was really, you know, the attitude I had to take on right from the get-go, living in the hospital and going through this really unprecedented experience. So
I feel like you only talked about embrace. What about the rest of them?
Oh yeah, I just feel like I'm talking a lot, so I want to give you
no. I'm
the
so zoned in that I could leave myself on mute for the entire time. Don't you worry about that. If I want to interject, I will. So continue. No,
so
continue. Take some water first if you need some. No, I absolutely love your philosophy. I'm truly zoned in. So okay, let's go to the next part.
So here we are in the hospital, going through my first week. It was hard, but not as hard as I had expected until quite the end of the first week, where I had my first vomiting experience and a few other things that hit me. And yeah, you realize the uncomfortability of the chemo and what it's doing in your body. It's killing all fast growing cells, and the things that were happening, fast growing cells, your ears, your hair, your mouth, your nose, those are all where the fast growing cells are. So my hair hadn't started falling out yet, but you know, you start getting mouth sores, you start getting ear ringing, you start getting nosebleeds because it's killing all these cells at such a rapid rate. So I had to start preparing for those types of things that were happening and continue to just accept and embrace all the side effects and everything that I was going through. After my first round was over, I had 2 weeks to rest. And by the next weekend, maybe 10 days after my chemo, first week had stopped, I went like this. For your at-home audience listening, I ran my hands through the back of my hair and I pulled my hand out and there was a clump of hair in my hand. And I was like, uh-oh, here it happens. And there is video of me doing this again on YouTube and in my show. All the videos are there. And the hair is it's coming out in clumps and pieces and clumps. And so it's earrings and nosebleeds and hair falling out. And I was a hot mess. And literally I was shedding so badly. We have 5 cats that we've rescued and have here at our house. One day, my wife looked at me and said, "You are literally shedding more than all 5 cats combined. We have to shave your head." I was literally, I would just be walking and just a clump would just fall out. And I was having all of a sudden there was big bald patches all over. And so one day we put the camera on and we went live on Facebook and my wife shaved my head. That was a highly watched video. It's on YouTube and it was a really
We're back to your acting career.
Experience.
No, but this is not acting anymore.
Yeah, no, but now I looked like I could go and step into a prison role or some sort of a thug. I was ready to go with that. But there I was, bald and ready to go into the next round. And the next round of chemo was starting 2 days later. And so I was right when I went back into the hospital and saw my old nurses that were there from the first round. I looked different. And there I was, time for round 2. What I will say is through this time, and there's a lot of the story and it's hard to explain over one podcast or one dialogue, which is why I made a one-man show which is why I've done talks and which is why I'm writing a book right now, so that you can really get the depth of the experience and learn at more levels of what I'm talking about. So I'm giving you sort of the taste of it right now, the teaser, if you will. I had to start radiating love in so many ways, not just for the cancer, the chemo, but for the experience that I was going through. I realized that I'm sitting there and I can now choose, am I going to be the victim of what's happening to me, or am I going to try to reach out to be the victor? Am I going to let this happen to me, or is it going to happen through me and I'm going to make decisions? What I realize is that everything comes down to a decision, comes down to a perspective. And I had to make the choice. Doesn't matter if I was in pain or feeling like shit or whatever was happening. I still had the choice of how I was going to react to it all and how I was going to face each day. I also had to look at what are some of the things that maybe I did to contribute. We all be like, oh, I got sick, I got cancer. Oh, poor me. This is what happened to me. It's like, well, let's talk about taking the power back now. What did I do to maybe contribute to cancer? And I looked at a long life of living with my heart emotionally closed down. As a kid, through bullying and illness in the family and other things I had experienced, I was emotionally shut off. Didn't cry for over 20 years. I didn't let myself really feel. And when you don't feel sad, you can only feel so much happy as well. Your emotions, when you shrink, it's sort of like a moving circle, if you will. If you stop yourself from feeling one emotion, you can only experience another emotion at such a level. And I realized that I was really kind of closing myself off from the full human experience. And for a long time, I lived with a very emotionally closed heart. And then one day I grew a tumor right into my emotionally closed heart. And so I said, wow, how about I could take some responsibility and own that a little bit? And maybe I contributed. Now, I'm not at fault. I didn't do anything wrong. Maybe I had some efforts into contributing to this. And now let me say, okay, what does it look like when I own that? And what it looked like was that I got to take some of the power back. I wasn't just the victim. I was a contributor. I was part of it. We were going through this together. And now I could say, okay, I'm going to move forward with that mindset that we need to work through some stuff together. And this is how we're going to thrive, by really owning what I'm going through. Excuse me, I need a sip of water.
That's fine. Does my sound better right now? Does it sound different than it would? Does it sound different than it was?
I don't remember what it sounded like.
I know. I worry that my microphone wasn't connected the entire time. So I guess I'll find out when I listen to it later.
I heard you.
Yeah, but I wonder if it was my AirPods. But anyways, don't worry about it. I'll edit this out. But yeah, continue.
So I'm in the hospital, and I also decided that instead of biding time and just watching daytime crappy TV, I chose to leave my TV off the entire time I was going through my cancer.
That's unheard of.
Yeah, I tried turning it on once, and after about 5 minutes, I'm like, I don't know why this is on. I'm turning it off. There are better things I can do with my time. I didn't turn on a TV again until I was recovering from my surgery, and where I literally couldn't move, and so I had no choice. So what I did was I decided to make my hospital room my own little sanctuary. We brought my own food, alkaline water, alkaline extra vegan food to supplement what the hospital couldn't provide. I brought my drumsticks, an acoustic guitar. I brought exercise bands, stretchy workout bands. I brought books, and journals, all my chanting beads and things. And I chose to turn my room into more of my sanctuary of healing. And it provided more space to heal. I even had essential oils because I couldn't burn anything, but I had oils. They would put it on gauze pads and in little urine sample cups. I know it's weird, but we would have lavender oils in cups around the room. So my room smelled beautiful and peaceful. And even when all the crew would come in to clean or bring food, they'd be like, oh, wow, it's so comforting and relaxing. And like
they probably want the whole hospital like that.
They enjoyed it, and they really liked coming into my room because it didn't smell like your typical bleach and hand sanitizer. So my room was a space of learning, and I chanted and meditated, read every morning. I did a whole ritual before I even had visitors. I would go through my whole, ritual of what I do spiritually wise and philosophically wise and personal growth and etc. And I would, get myself ready for the day, and I would exercise, work out with bands. I would take, 3 times a day, I would do laps around the hospital oncology floor. because I knew I had to keep myself teed up in the best shape I could be in, keep myself as healthy as I could, eat the best foods I could, took my cannabis oil every day, keeping me in good spirits and helping me stay hungry. And I did this every day. And then during the time, the rest of the day, I'd be working on music or writing or doing live videos or visiting with people, sharing, just downloading wisdom. I mean, I really felt like during my hospital stays and chemo was when I really touched enlightenment the closest I ever have. I was really just having a beautiful experience, even though it was also at times hell. And I mean, like, I make it sound all like, roses and everything, but pain and nausea and vomiting and sickness, sickly, and going from burning hot to freezing cold. And I mean, and swollen legs from all the fluids. And I mean, it really is ugly what happens. But I always kept coming back to finding the positivity and what can be learned from this and what can I contribute and how can I share this with others. And that's why every time I go through anything that was difficult, even go onto my phone, hit live video, and hi world, it's Justin from the hospital. I'm feeling like shit, and this is what I'm going through today, or whatever. Or I just had this great download, or I just wrote this poem, or here's a song. Like I had to create that space, and that was what I did. Now, after a couple weeks of doing this and the chemo and everything else, I really started to embrace the love side of things to a level that even surprised me. I was giving love to my whole process, giving love to the chemo. I even started to give love to the tumor. And I mean, I would be outside in my yard chanting to the stars. And I started to hold my chest. I started to hold myself, like self-hugging. I started to talk to my tumor. I would literally say, I love you. I thank you. I embrace you. I have gratitude. You have been a mentor to me, a teacher. I mean, look at what we've done already in this short amount of time. You aren't doing what you were supposed to do, but you have done so much more in helping create this new sort of task for us. And having that relationship to some is like insane. But I mean, it's like, it's my body. They're my cells. Tumor is part of me. How could I give hatred or anger or negativity to something that's part of me and inside of me? It didn't feel natural. It didn't feel right. Everyone's like, go to war, you kick its ass, and you got this and all this. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't really vibrate on my level. That just seems negative and it seems violent. And
Mhm.
I need peace and love and harmony. So why don't I love my cancer right out of me instead of fight it? And that was a
Yeah, you
way more
mentioned
peaceful
before
place.
that you hate the phrase "fuck cancer." You don't like the energy around that.
I don't. I mean, I know it's cancer has taken a lot of lives and hurt a lot of people. I mean, I've been around it, I've experienced it, but we're really declaring yet another war. And if you look back in our history, like name the last war that there was a winner. Like the war on drugs was declared in like 72, and we have the worst drug problem we've ever had. The war on poverty, the war on homelessness. And I'm in LA and there's more homelessness now than there's ever been. War when people fight, all there is death and bloodshed and the rich get richer and everyone else dies. It's like war is not an answer and war doesn't really, yield a winner. So why would I declare war on my own body and my own cells? A little lonely cell that got lost. Like, I'm going to hate him for that. Like, he's just trying to do what he was supposed to do. Every cell and every living organism in this world is programmed to survive. And that's all they know how to do. And that's all my tumor was doing, was trying to survive like everything else. So I accepted that fact. And I said, look, I can either love it or I can hate it, but it's not going to go away any faster. And by loving it, I really felt like I was contributing more positivity. And I felt like I was giving the tumor the permission to let go. And I would visualize all the little cells instead of being like attacked by machine guns, to just really realizing that, oh, it's okay. We did our job. We were late and we weren't, at the wrong place, but we did our jobs and we can just close our eyes and just fall off into nothingness and peacefully go away. Between what I was doing visually and spiritually and my cannabis and my diet and the chemo, after the second round of my chemo, we did another full scan, PET scan, CT, the whole 9 yards. And I was so far ahead of where they had hoped I would be as far as the counts on the tumors, that it was almost like I felt like there was self-healing that was going on and that I wasn't just relying on the medicine and the doctors to do it. And together we were overcoming this. And together we were way ahead of the game to the point where I could have probably stopped chemo after the third round, but they wanted to make sure for certain that there was not a single living cell left before they did surgery. So I did have to go through the fourth round. And that fourth round it destroyed me. It destroyed me so badly. I mean, I was at the point where when I went to get my pre-op blood work and everything before my big surgery, which was going to be at the end of July of that 2017, we had left the hospital area where we did the blood test, went out to lunch, we were at a meeting, and then my phone started to ring. And it was them calling me from the lab saying, listen, your blood count is way too low for you to be out in public right now. You have to go to the ER. And when I went there, I realized that it was my platelet count that had dropped to a level of three parts, which is like 3,000, but it shows 3 on the chart. And it's supposed to be between like 250, 350 in that sort of range. And mine was literally at 3. If you're below 50, they don't want you out on the street even. And if it's below 100, they won't operate on you. Meaning what platelets do is they stop you from bleeding internally, externally. So I could like just hit my arm on the chair and it could start bleeding internally and have no way to stop. And I would literally like bleed out from the inside. So it was like a very dangerous scenario. I had to stay in the hospital overnight, do blood transfusions all night long, AB positive. So I'm the universal receiver. So I was able to vampire all kinds of blood from the blood bank. And my surgery had to be postponed because I didn't have a high enough platelet count. And we had to wait about an extra week or so. And then on Friday, August 4th, I went in for an open chest surgery. And I have, again, for the at-home audience listening, I'm showing my chest right now. And I have a scar, from below my neckline all the way to around the middle of my top of my abs. They had to saw me open to remove the dead tumor. Well, it was stuck to everything. They had to remove about a 15-centimeter piece of my heart's pericardial sac and patch it with a Tedx material. They had to completely take out 1/3 of my right lung, which could not be replaced or rebuilt. They had to remove my largest vein. It's called the superior vena cava. They rebuilt that vein using bovine heart tissue. Was pretty shocking as a vegan to wake up and learn that I had cow parts inside of me. There's a little funny bit about that in my show as well, so I won't give away the joke. But
I'd be pretty pissed off. Were you pissed off? You're like, thanks for saving me,
but a
but
little bit, yeah. I mean, the thing is, like when you sign off on all the paperwork before your surgery, and they talk about all the things that can happen,
that was some fine print.
it wasn't even on there. That's the thing. It's like it said, you may die. Sign here. If we can't stop, when we have to clamp in a couple of places. If we can't clamp it properly, we're going to have to put you on the life support machine. You have to be okay with that, which means you could again die. Sign here. And you're signing here on all these different horrible things, but nor did it say, we may have to rebuild a part of you with another animal's tissue. So that was
the
that was
irony
shocking.
in everything.
I know it's funny, really.
Not to cut you off and not to sidetrack, but it's almost like a beautiful thing where it's and walk with me here. You've been vegan for so many years and avoiding hurting animals, and then it's an animal that saves your life.
Yeah, I know.
Pretty.
And I'm part cow, so I guess we're in it together. They kept going in the surgery. It was one of the most, some of the people that were in the room told some friends and family that were in the hospital that it was maybe the most intense surgery they had been a witness of. It was 8 hours. They had to also completely remove what's called the left innominate vein, which is the main vein that drains my left arm. And what's neat about that is your body naturally can build new pathways for blood to move back. It took a while. My arm was a little weird for a while, but it can move blood back in through smaller channels and it will rebuild those little channels. So that's a pretty interesting part of the human anatomy that you can do that. So this surgery, they sealed it up, titanium coils, and I still have the titanium in my body. I can feel it. And I was sent up to ICU. I got to the ICU that night about midnight. I had 3 tubes coming out of my chest in different places. They were very painful. I had 3 IVs. At one point during the surgery, they had an IV in my neck. Then they moved it to my arm. I had 2 IVs in one in my foot and one in my ankle. Those were really uncomfortable. And I literally could not move. I was like a baby. Like I couldn't lift my head. I mean, the nurse had to literally lift my head up, put a pillow behind it, let it rest back again, because I was literally stuck. I also couldn't have anything to eat or drink for the first 24 hours. And I was so dehydrated from the surgery that I was fantasizing about just a sip of water. Like they were putting little wet things in my mouth just to moisten it, but I couldn't swallow any of it. And I had never coveted anything so bad as an ice cold glass of water as I did that day. But I made great strides. By the next day, they tried getting me out of bed already, which didn't last long. But by the second day after the surgery, I was doing my first walk around the hospital, and I was in the ICU for a week, and then I was sent home. It was rough. It was rough having being told that we got the cancer out, everything tested clear in the margins. I had a lot of friends and family that were visiting me during the whole cancer experience when I was in the hospital and stuff. And now that I was sort of on the other side of at least that part, less people started to show up. So I could already feel the difference in the attention I was getting. But I stayed, as best as I could in that love space. The 2-month recovery after that surgery was brutal. I literally, like I said, for the first month, I needed my wife or a friend to come over and help me lift my head up. I had some of my buddies pitched in and rented me a hospital bed for 2 months to stay in my bedroom so I could get in and out of bed easier. It was hard though. There's a lot more to it. It'll take forever if I tell you everything. Listen, but it took about 2 months before I was really able to start walking a lot more effectively. And I was able to start doing some rehab, working out, and starting to rebuild myself again. And I was like, all right, it's November. I'm feeling okay. I'm cancer free, and I'm just going to go. I'm going to rebuild myself. You watch, and I'm going to show you guys how to rebuild a body. And I'm going to set that example like I've always done. But there was a little surprise waiting for me around the corner that I didn't know was about to happen. And this came in the way of a situation I had where I felt some interesting sensations in my chest. And I went to the ER one night because I was having really weird pain. It didn't feel right. And the ER, they couldn't figure out anything was really wrong with me after being there for about 8 hours. And so I was told to follow up with my general doctor. And I did. I saw her about a week after. She listened to my heart and, something doesn't sound exactly as I had hoped in there. I'm going to refer you to our cardiologist. Another week goes by. I meet the cardiologist. He listens to my heart and says, yeah, I'm hearing a little something. I'd like to take a deeper look. We're going to schedule you an echocardiogram. So about 4 days after I saw him, it was a Saturday morning, believe it or not, they scheduled me for an echocardiogram. I was feeling fine that day, went into the doctor's office, had the echo, left there. My wife and I had plans to go to an afternoon holiday party that day. It was December 16th. And so you remember these dates really well when you have traumatic experiences. And we're at the party and we're having fun. My phone's off. It's in my pocket. We're seeing all these friends and enjoying food. And it's just a really nice afternoon. I'm feeling good. And I stepped away to use the bathroom. And when I was on my way, I took out my phone just to check if I had any missed calls or anything. And then sure enough, there was 3 missed calls and voicemails from the cardiologist. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And then the phone rings again while I'm holding it. And I answer, I'm like, what's going on, man? He's like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm at a party. He's like, you need to leave right now. And you need to head to the hospital, go back to UCLA in Westwood where they did your surgery. If they ask any questions when you get there, just tell them you're having a pericardial effusion. That's all I want to tell you right now, but I need you to leave and go. So I'm like, you sure we can't wait around, party for a little more? I'm having sex. They're like, no. He's like, go. So I'm like, all right. So we made our way to the hospital. Meanwhile, he's busy paging, I guess, doctors who are on call because it's Saturday. So he's paging our
full
doctors.
team.
Yeah, paging doctors who are on call. The hospital was made aware that I was coming. I arrived at the ER, at a very big, busy hospital. And if you've ever been to the ER, I'm sure most of you out there in listening land have, you realize that it's a process and you got to sign in and show your insurance and they do the triage. And, 3 hours later, they may be seeing you finally. I walked in and it said, hi, I'm Justin. And they said, oh, come with us. And they brought me right back. Like, do not pass go. Let's go. And they hooked me up to some more machines. They ran some more tests, put me into another room. All of a sudden the door opens and 2 surgeons come in wearing street clothes. And they had just arrived at the hospital. They said, yeah, we were paged in. We are both heart surgeons. We are here because we need to take you into heart surgery immediately. You are having a cardiac tamponade, which means my heart sac had filled up with fluid and my heart was collapsing under the fluid inside of its own sac. They said,
But you
at
don't
that
feel
point,
any of that. It's just
I wasn't
happening.
feeling any of it.
Wow.
They told
But
me,
because of what you did with the doctor that Saturday morning, he
yeah,
saw it from the scans or
yeah,
your checkups?
that's how they determined it by
Mm,
that echocardiogram. Had I not had the
right.
echo that day, I probably wouldn't be sitting in this chair talking to you today.
Wow.
Because they told my wife at the hospital, they sometimes call this one the widowmaker, because a lot of times by the time you realize you're having symptoms, it's sort of too late to get to a hospital.
That's
Um,
such a cryptic
my
phrase. That's
Yeah,
scary.
it is. My top right aorta had already collapsed in on itself. And they said that if I didn't get into surgery right away, that I'd be dead within the next couple of hours. So we had to just prep and go. And what's crazy is that I went through all this cancer and this whole experience, but it wasn't until that day and that experience that I actually faced death in that very moment. And that's when my wife was the most scared that she had been of our entire journey as well. They rushed me in. They said, "Hey, when was the last time you ate?" And I'm like, "Well, an hour ago. We just came from a party." And they're like, "Well, we can't sedate you because you just ate. So you're going to have to be awake the whole time we do this." So they gave me a local anesthesia right in the spot, but I had to sit and watch them feed tubes into my chest and puncture the heart wall and start extracting fluid at a rapid rate out of my heart sac. And we
It's
did
like a
this
horror
together.
movie, Justin.
Oh, it was insane. Yeah, it
Oh
was
my
it was stressful.
God.
We didn't know why it happened, but we did the procedure and they finished. They got most of it out, maybe 2/3 of it out. Then they left a bag hanging off of this same hose essentially and had me go up into the ICU again to stay for a couple of days while it keeps draining and so they could monitor me. 3 days after that, my original cardiothoracic surgeon came back to visit me with his team in tow and said, "We don't know why this happened. It should not have happened. The only reason this typically happens is either A, there was a trauma." And I told them I didn't have any sort of traumas. You know, I didn't get hit or hurt myself or whatever. They said the other option is that the cancer spread into your heart and the cancer created this fluid thing. They're like, "So we are recommending another surgery." And this time they wanted to go in and create what's called a pericardial window, which is where they make a hole about a silver dollar size at the bottom of the heart sac and attach it to the top of your abdomen so that you essentially have a drain that can drain any fluid that may build up again. But this will also let them take that piece of tissue and test it for the cancer cells. Well, we went and did the surgery, even though I didn't want to do another one. And while they were in there, there was just some blood clots that had happened. And somehow my heart and my left lung had fused together. So they had to basically cut the two organs away from each other. And those blood clots created essentially the fluid to start backing up. And what happened was they did the procedure, they cut the window, they sent the tissue off for testing. It came back negative for cancer. So that was the biggest key. I was in the hospital that time for a total of, God, what was it, 3 weeks maybe. I was 46 nights in the hospital all when all was said and done. I was most of December. I remember I spent the holidays, in the hospital and that was pretty interesting. And we got the other side of that surgery and I was released 2 days before New Year's. And there you go. You're done. Go pick up the pieces and put yourself back together. In January, I did get the official lab reports that the cancer was not back. And we've been doing testing ever since to make sure it did not reoccur. But at this point, I was physically destroyed more than I had ever been my entire life, especially during this cancer journey. The chemo hit me hard. The open chest surgery hit me down even further. Now this heart situation it kicked my ass. And I had no strength, no stamina. I remember we went to a wedding that month, I believe it was about a month after that heart surgery. And I went to the bathroom and I was down a flight of stairs and I was walking up the stairs to go back to the party room area. And I literally couldn't make it. I got stuck in the middle of the staircase and I literally had to just stand there leaning against the wall until another woman came by and said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Actually, no, I can't physically walk up the rest of these stairs." And she helped me up the stairs and I couldn't call. I didn't have my phone on me. I couldn't call anybody. I was just stuck there. That's how bad it was. And knowing that I was an athlete playing drums and flag football and all this stuff just a year earlier, and now I can't walk up a flight of stairs. I was still pretty much hairless. I had started growing some back. My weight got down to 134 pounds at its lowest. I was really light. I had no strength. And I just felt at that point really hopeless. And all this embracing and loving and positivity and all these beautiful things that I'd been experiencing the last year, it seemed like I forgot it all. And I dipped down. You had asked me a while ago on this call, did you have any moments? I'm like, yes, this was the moment where, I dropped to this point of everything sucks. And I started having anger at everybody. I was, snapping at my wife for no reason and just treating people not with the nicest demeanor. And no, now that I was cancer free, no one was coming to visit me and no one was treating me like the special kid anymore. And I really felt like alone and hurt and low. And I started to fantasize about just being back in the hospital during my chemo. At least back then, like I was having all this wisdom and all this inspiration, and I was sharing it with people and had visitors coming every day and bringing me food and all this other stuff. And like now I'm just sitting at home by myself, and I can't do anything. I have no stamina. I can't breathe. My ear is still ringing. I'm dizzy every time I stand up. And I really, really felt low. And this is where the third step of the philosophy really came to play. And this is why it's so important and crucial that you reach the third step of the philosophy, because embrace and love will get you so far. But if you don't free your obstacle, once you've overcome it, then it will stay with you and you will continue to be part of that obstacle like I was. I never freed being a cancer patient. I never let it go. I never accepted that I was in a new place, not a new normal. I do not accept that terminology about anything in life or this current world situation, because a new normal means less than your old normal. And I don't think that we should ever live less than anything. But I was facing different challenges and scenarios that I had to learn to overcome. So I said, oh shit, I better go back to the top again. Let's start with embrace. Let's embrace where I am today. This is what I can do. This is where I'm at. Now, how can I go through this? So embrace and love had to start embrace and love again. And once I really got deep in the loves again, I really realized that I survived cancer, and I knew I was surviving cancer for a bigger reason: help people, to spread a good message, to put myself out there. And I'm an artist and a creator, and I have the opportunity to use my art forms and my creativity and what I do for a living to spread the word and to help people. I need to focus on what I can do and not what my limitations are right now. And most importantly, I need to make peace with the fact that I had cancer and I do not have cancer anymore. That I was a cancer patient, but I don't need to be the special guy anymore. I don't need to be treated differently anymore. And I don't need to be living in the mindset that I have to have cancer and go through the treatments to have realizations and positivity. I need to free this from me. I need to let it energetically go. I need to step over that threshold and into my next phase of life. And when I made that transition, it was like the weight lifted off me. I felt alive again. I mean, I was physically still, it took me a long time. I mean, it wasn't until middle of 2019 where I started to gain some strength back, and I'm still, fighting that challenge, so to speak, today and rebuilding my body. But I was really able to put the focus. I started doing more speaking engagements. I started notes for the book that I would eventually start writing. I was inspired to create a one-man show, which I started creating around the early to mid part of 2018. And I worked really hard to make that show. And it just, everything sort of started to come together when I took it off of me. And I said, really, this isn't about me. And I was saying this during cancer as well, that I will survive for something bigger than myself. And I need to keep remembering that it's not about me. And that's where I really, with a full head of steam, went into the end of 2018, creating this one-man solo theater show, which I debuted in early 2019. And it's a 90-minute production, music and comedy and characters. I really tell the story and the lesson in a way that's entertaining and fun. And I show videos from the actual journey, so you really get a good flavor for it. I played that show 5 times throughout 2019. I was accepted to give a Tedx talk, which I did a week after my last performance in November of 2019. And kept applying to do more, getting asked to do more speaking engagements. I got to speak for the UCLA Goals Humanism Honor Society and speak to sort of the future doctors about how to treat patients on a different level. Since then, I've been asked by UCLA to come back and do a video with them and some other projects. And more speaking engagements had been opening up. And I really had always wanted to be a sort of an inspirational speaker for many years. And I had platforms I was speaking on before cancer, But this really gave me the biggest platform and the biggest message that I could really become an expert of and really speak to people globally about how to go through their obstacles. Because I really realized that cancer is a huge obstacle, but not everyone has to go through cancer to go through their obstacles with a more empowered and powerful way. Embrace Love Free can work with any obstacle of any shape or size. And when you realize that you can apply this to life, you really will have a different perspective of looking at anything that you might have to face. And when you really look at it that way, your whole obstacle really becomes a more palatable thing to go through. It becomes easier at times, and you become more set up to benefit from it in the end. And the benefit is for you and for others. And the more you can benefit from overcoming your challenge, the more you're going to raise the vibration in the world. And the more we all collectively raise that vibration, the better world we all collectively live in together.
It's amazing when you're asking the universe and you're manifesting things. Sometimes it comes to you in a form that you think, that's not exactly what I was asking for, but okay. You heard a little bit, but you didn't really give me what I was looking for. But sometimes it turns out, like you said, I've always wanted to be an inspirational speaker. And in your mind, you're like, oh, well, I didn't really want to go through this to get there, but I guess here we are.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like I said before, when I said I was ready, I didn't know what I was ready for, but I was ready.
Yeah,
for
you said I was
this.
ready for my next challenge. You're like, okay, I guess this is what you're
There it
giving me.
was. That was all supposed to have. But I mean, since going through it and coming out of it and staying true to that philosophy and staying true to the mission, of helping people, I've been able to start building my speaking career. I've been able to get on some big stages. I've been able to perform my show, which is, since we had to shut everything down this year, I have not been able to do it again. So I edited together a really nice package of one of the performances last year and put it online and help raise money for the theater. And the show is now available online on demand. If you go to embracelovefree.com, it'll take you to the page on my website that has the link, and you can rent it, and it'll help a few bucks to the theater, and you get 72 hours to watch it. And I'm sharing that, and I'm helping other people. And I got back to my book, and really doing the TED Talk as well as doing the one-man show changed the way I was going to write my book from what I had started writing before. And my book had a whole new life now. And I'm writing aggressively and trying to get the first draft done this year so that I have a really empowered sort of teaching memoir that I can share with the world and keep putting it out there. And, in the meantime, my wife and I are working on a couple new documentary feature films, one of them called Caregiving Cancer. You can learn more about that. The website is caregivingcancer.org. And this is a film that we're making through the caregiver's eyes, because for every cancer patient, there's a caregiver, and there's no resources for caregivers. And it's really something we saw that we needed to have out there. And so we're making a film, and we had to put our production on hold for a little bit, but we're hoping to start shooting again soon and create a nice feature, film that can go out there and be sort of a manual for those who are caring for cancer patients and really have hope and support. So, I mean, it has spawned so much art and so much creation and so much opportunity, and to continue our mission of creating art that matters. Now we're doing it on even bigger scales, so not that I think anyone needs to go out there and get cancer to change their lives. As a matter of fact, I'd like to teach you how to change your life now without having to go through the cancer route. But for me, I was changing my life, but I didn't have the real kick in the ass that I needed until the cancer came along. And this gave me the ability to transition myself into a much powerful being, to do what I'm really here to do, fulfill that mission, and stand in my greatest power.
You mentioned that the documentary of caregivers is going to come out soon, but can you give us a bit of a teaser? Because I'm really curious about how majority of us have had someone in our lives battling cancer, and I think majority of us never feel like we're doing enough. So what do you recommend to the support system and how they can help someone battling cancer?
It's a great question. And, we really want to empower caregivers. And a lot of times the best thing a caregiver can do for the person they're caring for has nothing to do with the person they're caring for. Most caregivers put their lives on hold and stop taking care of themselves when they care for another, because either they feel that they don't have enough time or they feel guilty, a lot of guilt. How can I go and get a massage or go to the spa or go to the gym or whatever when my home significant other is suffering at home and I need to be there by their side the whole time. But the problem is you as a caregiver, as a human being now, are lacking the essential self-care that all people need. And you begin to burn out. And what happens is if you are not 100%, you can't be 100% for the person you're caring for. Furthermore, you will start finding yourself resenting your patient because you've put your life on hold for them. And no cancer patient in their right mind, at least I can only speak for myself, but I hope to think most would be like this, that you don't want another person to stop living because of what you're going through. You appreciate their help and you need it, but you want them to take care of themselves. Self-care is a beautiful and essential thing that a lot of us don't do enough of. So encouraging people to take care of themselves and finding ways to take care of themselves is huge. Also, stepping into the fact that there are great cancer organizations like We Spark Cancer Support Center, which is right here in the Valley in Los Angeles, and there's others. They're free. They offer services for the caregivers as well. Even the healing modalities, in addition to support groups, really helps to be in a support group with other people where you can just vent and scream and yell and say whatever you want to say. Those are all really crucial. So outside of that, there's so much information, and I can barely get to any of it in a short amount of time that we'll put this in the film. But it's about where to look for resources, how to look for resources. Most of the time, you're given a bunch of pamphlets. It's overwhelming. You don't know where to begin. You can't figure out what you're supposed to do. There's no sort of guide, one basic guidebook. And most of the time, the doctors are guiding you on what to do medically speaking, but they have no idea what to do for other modalities. My wife found WeSpark for us because she happened to be on a shoot. She was a cinematographer hired to do a shoot. And the woman who hired her, they were talking about my cancer. I was still in the hospital during this week. And she mentioned, have you heard of WeSpark? No, why didn't anybody tell us about this? It's a free cancer support center less than 10 minutes from our house that offers so many services, And so to understand, to know where to look for these types of services, to know the things that you can do outside of the medical, from diet to exercise, to spiritual, to mental, to emotional, all the things that are really crucial. When a caregiver is fully equipped with all that, even knowing how to deal with other people, family members, those who are not supportive, those who are being too supportive, how to talk to people who are exhausting you guys with questions. People are calling my wife, constantly asking about me. Number one, it's exhausting for her. That's why we were doing the live videos on Facebook and stuff, so they could just watch the update on video and stop bothering us. But number two, the people stopped asking her how she was. It was, hey, Mary Lou, how's Justin? Like, how's Mary Lou first? She's emptying my pee urinals and lifting my head and bringing me food and doing all these things for me and going through the emotions of it. But people sort of bypass that. So that's a little teaser of some of the things we're going to cover in the film, but we really, really want it to be something that all caregivers and cancer patients themselves too can watch to really learn and grow from, and to have a sort of one-stop shop resource where they can get all the information that wasn't included in the books and pamphlets, and in a way that they can digest it easy by just watching a 90-minute film, as well as, hearing from other caregivers who will give you hope and direction. And, not every patient lives, and there has to be some preparation for what happens when a patient doesn't physically survive their cancer. And all this will be included, in the film. And we really want to start shooting again as soon as we can. We've already had to push this movie twice. The first time we pushed it, we were starting to work on it actually right after my cancer, and my heart situation happened. And so it got pushed about a year and a half just because we couldn't do anything after that. And then we got really busy, and then planned to start shooting earlier this year. And everyone who's, not living under a rock knows that the whole world's been shut down since the beginning of this year. So of course we were pushed again. And so we're still doing some fundraising, looking for some grants, but essentially we're ready to start shooting as soon as people out there feel safe. I don't want to do it over Zoom and stuff. I just had to make a documentary film for a client using Zoom interviews, and it worked, but it's a little bit of a soulless type of filmmaking. So we'll get back
It's
to
not
shooting.
the same, is it?
No, it's not. It takes the art out of making a film. So we're gonna get it right, but we're gonna get it done, and hopefully by next year at some point we'll have the film ready.
And Justin, one last question before I start wrapping it up. On top of the caregiver question, what if you're not the caregiver and you're almost the significant other of maybe someone's parent that's going through it? You're just kind of on the sidelines, but you still want to support. How do you
Yeah.
recommend people just supporting?
Right. Well, the easiest way to support somebody, and this is a lesson for those going through anything, not just cancer, ask questions. What do you need support with? I am here. Just being there, checking in with somebody. How are you doing? What do you need? I am here. Very simple. Most of the time, they're not going to need anything and they're going to say thank you and they're going to know you're thinking of them. Sending energy their way. It's very powerful. But when you ask somebody, when you let someone know that you are holding space, that you are here, whatever it is you need, how can I support you? This is something that goes for anything. When someone's going through something, most men like myself are also very guilty of trying to fix it right away. That's what we do. But you can't fix somebody's cancer and you can't fix what they're going through. So don't try it to fix it. A lot of people are, come at you with, you should do this, you should do that, you should try this, you should try. I mean, it's overwhelming the people who all think they know what you're supposed to do. That's not the first thing to do. Ask questions. Let them answer those questions. If they want advice, or if you have like really a burning piece of advice, I know I have tons of burning advice from diet to everything else, but I don't push it on anybody. I ask them, what areas do you need support? And then if I feel like there's something I can really help with, I ask for permission. May I share with you something that I did for myself in hopes that if you think that it may work for you, you can try it as well. Those are really important things to do. Supporting the person who is the caregiver is also great as well. Really asking them how they're doing and offering the same. How can I support you? What can I do? Be there and hold space has a lot of power. Skipping away, trying to fix, trying to micromanage, or just, freezing completely is very low vibration. So, holding space and being there and just offering is really powerful.
That's really helpful. I tend to never know what to do if someone's going through a hard time, especially if it's like a physical sickness. I have so much empathy, but I'm the type of person that just wants to fix it and do a task to do something. But if someone's physically sick, that type of helping is not going to work. So thank you for that answer. That was a selfish question of mine, but
That's
I'm
okay.
glad. I'm sure it'll be
It,
helpful for everyone.
absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is you can't, like I said before, you can't fix it. And when someone is going through something very physical, it's challenging because you want to offer more help or you look at them in a way like where you kind of feel sorry for them. And that is also not a place that anyone wants people feeling sorry for them. Talk to them like a human. Most people will tell you if you're going through cancer, stop asking me about cancer. Stop wanting to talk about cancer nonstop. Treat me like a person. Talk to me about sports or the weather or whatever. Like just have a dialogue with me like we used to do. That's a great thing to do is just treat a person like a person. Suddenly they're sick and we're talking in a quieter voice. Cancer becomes taboo. We look at them like, oh, it's Tori, you. Don't treat people like a victim. Don't feel sorry for them. Hold space with them and have dialogue. Show up and watch a movie together. Listen to music. Have fun. Make people laugh. All we do is, it's cancer, cancer, cancer all the time. So give us something else to think about. And that's just something that, people just want to be treated like a person. You want to be treated whole. You're already feeling less than and weak and in a lower state. So how can you treat somebody in a higher state of mind? How can you just treat somebody like the person that they are, not as a victim of the current circumstance they're going through?
Justin, it seems so obvious to say that, but truly, it's not. When you're the person that's not going through it, you just freeze. And I love what you said. It's stop fucking talking about cancer. Like, stop asking me. Like, fuck off.
Yes.
So I feel that. Justin, so that we can wrap up, what's next for you? Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with? And where can we all find you? I'm going to link a lot of your one-man show and your TED Talk and all of your links, but what would you like to leave the audience with and give us a teaser into what's next for you?
Amazing. Well, it's been a beautiful honor and a privilege to talk to you on this podcast. And we've gone on for quite some time. And I'm sure, we've left a lot of material on the table. We haven't covered everything, believe it or not. But, right now, I'm just thankful that, my wife and I are busy with work in our film and photography studio. And I'm not sure what's going to be next with my show or with playing in bands again or who knows what. But I've been rebuilding my body. I got very blessed. My wife and I were accepted into a Beachbody test group earlier this year, and we've been working out and
Whoa.
eating a crazy great diet. And I've been getting physically in such better shape than I've been in so long and building my stamina. So I want to get out there and play flag football again as soon as that's safe to do so. But from an artistic standpoint, really, my book has become my priority as far as my creations right now. I want to get that done because I think that there's so much I can share more in the book than just in these conversations about the story and about how to apply the embrace love free philosophy. So, look out for more speaking things. Look out for the book sometime next year. I'd love for you guys to check out my one man show. Again, it's available for rent. It's only $9.99, and proceeds help this little theater that is, fighting to stay alive during this time. You get a full 72 hours to view it as many times as you want. And that's available. And, we'll start shooting a documentary soon. And aside from that, every day is just wake up and hit it. I'm still doing everything I do. My morning rituals are strong, my meditation, my chanting, all my things that I do. And just taking it one day at a time, working, staying afloat, working on my creative projects, and just getting out there and connecting with people like yourself to share the message, to just give what I can give and filling out this sort of mission that I've been on. I'd love to stay in touch with you guys. I'm on all the social media sites. The easiest way to find me is at Justin Sandler, like Adam Sandler, but not. I don't think we're related. I just keep getting asked that. But at Justin Sandler on Twitter and Instagram and, Facebook/Justin Sandler. I've got a professional page on there as well. Where else can you find me? My website is a really great one-stop shop, justinsandler.com. I make it pretty easy. On that website, you'll have links to like my films and my music and the one man show. Like they are all linked on the website. On the landing page at the very bottom, there is a form. Just put your name and email in and you can get on my mailing list. I would love for you guys to sign up. I don't spam or sell information or even send out frequent emails. It's really every few months or less. It's about when there's really content that's valuable that I will share and to offer up when I have something, that's new coming out, like the book or a film or whatever. But at least this way, if you drop me, putting it on my mailing list, I will have the ability to contact you, and send you stuff. And I don't know where else I'll be, but I do hope to see some of you out there in real life soon. Through the stuff we're doing, we can reach you on an international level. Hope to travel internationally again soon. But in the meantime, you can find me and I'm here to help and support. If you're going through cancer, please reach out. A lot of people find me online and my social sites and reach out and ask for help. And wherever I can, I will field emails and calls and just offer up whatever advice I can to help you go through what you're going through. It's been a privilege to help some people in other countries that have found me recently through Instagram and to know that my message has reached people all over the world. It's really an honor. And I will keep doing that every day as long as you guys keep showing up and giving me that chance to do it. And I'm really grateful to be here. I'm really grateful for all of you for sticking out and listening to this very long-winded podcast. But thank you all so much. And thank you for having me on the show. It's been totally fun and a great experience.
Justin, it's been an absolute pleasure. Cancer has affected the majority of families in some way or capacity. It touched my family quite recently, and I've learned a lot from our conversation and just how to hold space for someone that's going through it, especially if you're not the primary caregiver. So, as I mentioned earlier, that was a selfish question. I'm glad I understand because I'm sure it's going to touch my family or someone close to me again
Amazing.
eventually. Justin, you are an inspiration, truly. Wait, as soon as your book comes out, please let me know so I can re-promo and remind everyone of this episode next year. This episode will come out very soon. But like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you and hear your story. And I appreciate you spending the time with me.
Well, thank you again. I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.